did yesterday. We have talked since I met you last spring about this election, but we have focused almost entirely on the presidential. There is so much more to it. And I hope that just that little clip about the filibuster and the Senate appointment confirmation with the Supreme Court really kind of paint the picture that if you're a Trump supporter, it's a good thing that he won, but he has a long way to go to accomplish the stuff that he wants to accomplish. And not only that, but there is still a lot in his way. But at the same time, it's kind of a cool thing that we finally have a unified government, because that means quick change if they're able to come together. So that is a concern. But looking up here, sorry, Tabitha.
Oh, I just saw incumbent. If you were watching on, I think it was Fox, they would show senators and stuff like that, and it would show somebody's name, and then it switched to incumbent to show that they were already the senator or something like that. So I thought that was cool that it let us know who was already and most of them won if they were already in office.
And it's so easy. It's so easy for the incumbent to win, and it starts based on the level. So the incumbent usually wins in both. So it's hard to defeat a candidate for the second or going into the second term. So in other words, 2020, whatever Democrat is picked to run against Donald Trump has a lot of work cut out for them. So, well, we'll see for a four. But we have Barack Obama, easy. George Bush, easy. Bill Clinton, easy. It takes a lot. It takes a lot to defeat an incumbent. It's even harder at lower levels. The Senate, very, very difficult. The House, almost impossible. So there are a lot of reasons for that, but it's very, very difficult. Some of the other big changes, I think that you probably are able to see it, but they have to really know what they're talking about. In 2018, we had, I think the numbers just quickly are about 120 million voters right now in the country. We'll be lucky to get 60 in 2 years. People don't go because there's not enough attention. So you have to actually know who you're doing or who you're talking to and be able to communicate with your voters. And some other differences, this is where 2018 will still be a pretty important election for Democrats and Republicans, is Congress tries to avoid what is happening in D.C. So in other words, I'm not a part of D.C. I'm from Michigan. I'm going to help you as a citizen of Michigan, where you see this now, and the whole model of Donald Trump is that he doesn't fit in with the politicians of the Republican Party. So his support is actually coming from not being a part of the mess in D.C. So that comment about the polls about how people are not satisfied with the government and overwhelmingly supporting Donald Trump because of it, that's a part of this. That's a part of this where it typically is a divide. You typically have a divide where, even when the party is yours, you have to distance yourself from it. So we'll kind of see what happens in 2 years. And that's a part of the midterm elections. So again, the midterm election, there's going to be such a smaller population that goes and votes. Who is going to go vote in the midterm election? What type of person? Paul? Because you're 18?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay, good, Paul. Civic duty, nice. It's going to be the people who care. It's not just going to be because you see it on TV. It's going to be because you take the time to follow it. And this is where it really matters. So I didn't bring it up when we were talking about the numbers, but historically, in elections, if the president isn't doing well, they lose seats in the Senate and the House. That's where coattails come in. So when historically, let's use Abraham Lincoln, Republicans. If you ran as a Republican in 1872, let's say, you were going to be elected pretty easily because everybody was so favorable of Abraham Lincoln after the assassination and the Republican Party. just because there was that optimism. You didn't matter who you were, you rode their coattails. Now it's actually different. Now it's the opposite. You don't get elected because if you run as a Democrat, people are starting to like, actually they're starting to like Barack Obama more than they have his entire term. Maybe I don't know. I don't know if they like him or they just like that he's leaving. Either way, it's going up. But we have, but what you got to think is people were running and just saying, I'm a Democrat, vote for me. Obama's a Democrat. That does not happen anymore. And part of it is because we're becoming more aware, more educated. You can seek out the information on your own. What is happening now is the reverse, where 2018 is going to say a lot about what people think of Donald Trump, because they can't vote Donald Trump out in 2018. But what they can do is they can replace every Republican member of the House of Representatives, and they can replace a big chunk of the U.S. Senate. And that has much, much, much more to do with a dislike of Donald Trump than it would for their performance. So that's why that election will tell you a lot. If they remain their control, maintain it, that's a good sign for the Republican Party and for Donald Trump's presidency. What? And these are the qualifications as Noah's talking as you put this one in.
Because if the Democrats and are forced to continue with filibuster for 2 years, that will reflect very poorly on them. Because then racist Democratic Republican senators can just say, "Oh, well, I want to help you, but
They've got to get their job in 2 years. So like the filibuster thing, they have to get their job in 2 years, or most of them. So they can't just do it and do it and do it. They have to still worry about what is the perception from the public, and those are all pieces here. You know, the presidential approval rating has such an impact on whether congressmen or congresswomen follow what they're doing. So if Donald Trump starts out, and usually they get a little bit of a honeymoon period, it's right around 100 days. Then they get kind of evaluated like publicly and stuff, like, you know, newspapers, and they use that as a measuring stick. If Donald Trump is well liked after 100 days from the people, not from the Republican Party, from the people, the House and the Senate are going to go along with what he says a lot easier than if it's bad. Because if it's bad, they don't want to be associated with somebody who isn't liked because they have to worry about their job in 2 years. He doesn't. What?
plus the fact that Donald Trump's being elected represents a huge shift in who politicians in general have been appealed to. Because Donald Trump's act is heavily influenced by the alt-right, who are literal neo-Nazis. Now that they've become an actual force in elections,
They have to appeal to that group. And that's where like the Republican Party has to appeal to that extreme because that's who's voting now. You know, there was a big talk in 2012 that Republicans were going to have to rely on the Hispanic vote. They were thinking about going that direction. They tried. Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio had a lot of primary support, and then Donald Trump happened. So it was basically abandoned, and he still won. So that is a shift then in the coalition that they were trying to get to. Think about, looking at coalitions before. It was a big shift. Looking at this, though, with our qualifications, 3 constitutional qualifications to become president and a member of Congress. Where are you born? Where do you live? And how long, basically. So your age. Youngest, because it wasn't as serious. This is the one right here. This is the only one that was elected by the people. They don't get to do as much cool stuff, and they aren't as respected. So they can be a little bit younger. You only have to be 25 years old. For 7 years, you have to be a citizen, meaning you don't have to actually be born a U.S. citizen. Senators, a little bit more respected, a little bit older, up to 30 now. And then the president, even more. And this is the one, we'll talk more about it when we get to the presidential chapter, but this is a big part of like it happened with John McCain, and he was a Republican. President Obama, with his birth certificate, John McCain was not born in the United States, but he was born as a U.S. citizen. So the natural born citizen clause is the part that says you have to be a natural born citizen. It doesn't say you You have to be born in the geographic United States. So that one is much more up to Congress and defining citizenship than it is for anything else. If your parent is a member of the United States, a U.S. citizen, in other words, by birth, you are a U.S. citizen. So it doesn't matter where President Obama was born. He was born naturally a U.S. citizen. So it was kind of a fruitless argument to begin with, but that's up to Congress. That's not a constitutional thing. Congress could change that if they wanted, but they just haven't. What?
Question: are the citizenship requirements consecutive?
So the citizenship, you're a citizen, you're a citizen. If you were to, your residency, the 14 years for president are consecutive. You have to live here consecutively for 14 years. So basically what that prevents then is it prevents you from going to live in Russia, let's say. You're here all your life. You go to Russia, live there for 10 years, then come back and you want to be president all of a sudden. It's like, what for type thing. So it's kind of a preventive measure there. But then also go back to what the Constitution was. I mean, the whole natural born citizen thing was so people were not coming from the colonies, from the islands, the British islands, like Alexander Hamilton, or the UK and coming over. It was, you had to be born here to be able to do it. So looking at the election, kind of with how we go about the selection. I mean, when did Hillary and Donald start their, like I'm both on first name basis now. When did they start their election campaign? A long, long time ago. Because you have to figure out how you get there. So you get the support, you build up the steam, and then before you know it, probably both of them were like, wow, we actually have a chance to win this thing. And then it kind of shifts. It shifts how they go at it. But political action committees, things that we looked at, finished up on Monday, they need money. Hundreds of millions of dollars were spent on the presidential campaign. And most of those ads in the last few weeks, and this is where it gets bad, most of them are negative on both sides. I'm just glad that it's over with because it was just so hateful. Looking at Donald Trump and looking at Hillary Clinton, it was just so hateful. And they talk about uniting the country, and then that's how they run their campaign, and it's kind of unfortunate. But looking at our dollar amounts, your maximums, they earn enough money as it is. These dollar amounts are more for the individual congressional campaigns than it is for president. So this is where we'll kind of leave. We aren't going to get through it all. But just looking at these four options, okay? Looking at these four options, they have huge, huge teams of people to help them with strategies. Those 4 T's are how they mold their campaign. And the one that I want you to think about before we get out of here, I just referenced it. They decide, how are we going to go about this? Are we going to talk about making things better because things are already in a good place? Or do they take the negative road? So both sides, you could probably look at and figure out what did they use their tone. Because if you appeal to people not liking the establishment, you get one side. If you appeal to the fear, that Hillary presenting the fear, or the hate, I guess, the bigotry, then you get another side. So thinking about that of the 4, and we'll talk more tomorrow. And make sure I will put that up so you'll be able to